Before going into this episode today, because we are here on the YouTube, I do have to say that this whole episode is for educational and entertainment purposes only. I also want to give a trigger warning. If you are not ready to hear any type of conflicting information about your religion, then you might not want to watch this episode. In this episode, Catherine and I are going to be going through the religion of Saturn, which affects the biggest religions in the world. So again, if you're not ready to hear this information, if it's going to make you upset and make you project how upset you are onto others in the comment section, then please don't watch this video. Please come back to this video when you are ready to hear this information. Otherwise, let's get into the show. The most powerful secret society in the world is allegedly the Saturnalian Fraternity. It is theorized by many occult researchers that this particular fraternity delves into dark magic and also knows a lot of the secrets that have been long lost to modern day man. It has been theorized that this fraternity has been in power for at least 6,000 years. And unfortunately, most people today have absolutely no idea how much the planet Saturn and the worship of the planet Saturn affects our day-to-day lives. But before we go any further, you know what to do. Please hit that subscribe button and give us a like. And before we get into the episode today, just a big thank you to all of our patrons and our producers here on Esoteric Atlanta. Without you guys, this channel would not be possible. If you would like to help support the work we do here on Esoteric Atlanta, there is a link to our Patreon account down in the description box below. Jordan Maxwell was an American researcher and speaker known for his work in the fields of occultism, conspiracy theories, and esoteric knowledge. He gained prominence in the 1990s and the 2000s through his lectures, interviews, and documentaries, where he explored topics such as the hidden meanings behind symbols, the influence of secret societies, and the connections between religion and ancient mythology. Maxwell's work often focused on the idea that there are deeper, often concealed truths about society, religion, and history that are not widely understood. He was particularly interested in the connections between ancient civilization and modern beliefs, and he often discussed the implication of these connections for contemporary society. Throughout his career, Maxwell was a controversial figure, attracting both followers and critics. His theories and interpretations of historical and religious text were sometimes met with skepticism, particularly from mainstream scholars and historians. In addition to his research, Maxwell was known for his engaging speaking style and his ability to present complex ideas in a way that resonated with many people interested in alternative perspectives on history and spirituality. His legacy continues to influence those interested in conspiracy theories and esoteric traditions. Esoteric Atlanta has been open for 5 years now on YouTube. And if you have enjoyed your time here with me, which I hope you have, then you have Jordan Maxwell to thank for that. Because Jordan Maxwell inspired me. Jordan Maxwell is the reason that I woke up back in 2016. And so I dedicate this episode today to the late, great Jordan Maxwell. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Esoteric Atlanta. Just a quick PSA before we get into the cult of Saturn or the Saturnalian fraternity. I got this email this morning when I woke up. There was an email in my inbox from Criminal Justice Chris. You guys know Chris. She comes on a lot to talk about the Son of Sam and other cases that kind of are in the orbit of Son of Sam. She'll be back on next week as well to look at some occultism. She has an incredible blog. She's an incredible researcher. Well, she sent me her latest blog last night and asked if I could help her. It seems that there is a photo that has been going around of a little boy that a lot of these media outlets have said was David Berkowitz when he was a child. And David Berkowitz is contacted Chris to reach out to all of us to put this out there that this is not him. And some of you guys might be like, well, what does it matter? It does matter. And, you know, when the bad guys of the world go low, we go high. And David Berkowitz really wants to right this injustice. So I'm going to show you guys the picture that has been going around. Right when I saw the blog, I knew exactly what picture it was going to be. Again, this is a picture of a child that they've said that this was Berkowitz as a young boy, and it is not. And so Berkowitz emailed Chris and said, I have an assignment for you. If you're up for the challenge, I would like to learn the identity of this young boy and then somehow get word to either him or someone in his family that somehow a childhood photo of him has been misappropriated and is being used by a number of individuals and media outlets as a photo of David Berkowitz. And so this request marks the first time publicly that Berkowitz, who has spent nearly 50 years in prison and now identifies as a born-again Christian, has commented publicly on the widespread misuse of this image. His letter highlights both a factual error and a moral concern for the victim, expressing sympathy and empathy for the minor in the photo, whose identity remains unknown. Berkowitz is clearly dismayed the image has been used without consent. So again, if you guys could spread this blog around, I'm going to put her blog in the description box below, this particular blog. Spread the photo around. If we could find out who this boy is, he's now an adult, obviously. This is like from the 70s. Just so we can correct this mistake that the legacy media has made. And to me, that speaks volumes that David Berkowitz himself wants to correct this, because it's not fair that this child or this man whose childhood photo is being attributed to a serial unaliver when obviously this is an innocent person. And so I'm going to have that in the description box below. If you guys could do us a solid and just share this blog, share this photo on your social media outlets, on your Facebook pages. I'm probably going to put one up on Instagram later today, maybe on TikTok, and see if we can right this atrocious wrong that the legacy media has made. Like, let's correct this. Like, this is not fair to this child, to this man today. And if legacy media and the establishment wants to fact check us, then I think it's only fair that we should fact check them, because this is serious. So thank you guys. Now let's go ahead and get on into the cult of Saturn. All right, you guys. I am actually, you know what, Catherine, it's so funny. The other day yesterday when I was prepping for this show, my boyfriend came in. We were just chatting with my boyfriend, but he came in and he asked me what I was doing. And I told him, he was like, you're going back to your roots. I feel like I'm going back to my roots with this topic, because this stuff, you know, Catherine, we've said it so many times, as Aristotle quotes, is a sign of an intelligent mind to be able to entertain an idea without accepting it, which I think is totally lost in our society today. And this topic of Saturn, the cult of Saturn, the Saturnalian fraternity, brotherhood, many different titles, is so vast and so interesting and maddening, but also fascinating at the same time. And I'm so excited to talk to you about it today, Catherine. What are your first impressions when we decided to do this topic?
Well, it's fascinating because it's something I would say for me has been on the periphery of everything. So the symbolism, you know, we all know the saying, the symbolism will be their downfall, but it is like everything. The more you see it, you can't unsee it. And then when you see also how widespread this symbolism is across the globe, it's a bit like when the 2020 pandemic that we can't talk about hit, and everyone got very well aware, well, everyone in our audience got very well aware about how all the news reporters were given the exact same story to tell, even the same numbers, the same figures and everything. And we sort of, well, I was like, oh, wow, we're really seeing this play out for the first time. And then when you go into studying this sort of things, you see this has just been literally going on for centuries, and I'm just catching up for it.
I mean, and it is so vast, you guys. Like I said, we're just going to like really skim the surface because it's complicated and nuanced. But what inspired this, guys? I want to plug your podcast, Catherine, because last week Catherine had me on her podcast and she asked me the questions of like how I woke up. And I actually shared, and I'll share it here. I'll put it down in the description box, that my boyfriend, in a very peculiar situation in India, I was covered in oil, I couldn't touch the laptop, played this particular lecture with Gordon Maxwell that I had to sit through because I was covered in oil, from 2001. It's so weird. I think of 2001 wasn't that long ago. Then I see this,
exactly.
But I'm like, damn, we're old. Called The Cult of Saturn. And this was the first thing that really shook me to my core. You know, where you see something and you can't unsee it again. And you know that everything you've been taught is a lie. And that was my first introduction to Jordan Maxwell. And he is no longer with us. He did pass away in 2022. No conspiracy there. He was an old man. So, you know, that just was his time. I know a lot of people have speculated if he was controlled opposition. And my boyfriend and I spoke about this yesterday. But he was living in poverty when he died. Like the establishment really punished him hardcore. And Catherine, we've experienced that. There was a Sean Atwood interview where one girl confirmed that when they don't want you to continue speaking the truth, they will attack your finances. And that's something you and I have experienced. It just pisses me off, though. Literally, it has the opposite effect on me. I just want to go harder. And that's what happened to Jordan Maxwell. And, you know, maybe not all of his research was accurate. We were texting about, he never talks about Tartaria. I don't think he ever questioned the geography, anything like that. I think he was more interested in the customs and the rites that they go through and how it affects us in our world. And I also want to, before we get into it, just a disclaimer, because this is YouTube. This is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research. So YouTube, it's just entertainment YouTube. That's all this is. And I want to also remind everybody that the darkness cannot create anything. Only the light can create. So when we talk about Saturn as a planet, as an energy field, it has its purpose, right? It is created by God, just like we've all been created by God. But what happens is the darkness will invert things and take it too far, if that makes sense. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Catherine, before we get into the conversation.
One thing I will add, I mean, this is such a broad conversation. This touches on every aspect of our lives. So and I am absolutely not. I'm a student and enjoying learning and sort of connecting the dots. I'm absolutely no expert on this. But one thing in my research, when I was listening to one of the David Icke videos on all his research for this, and he played the music. I'm laughing in the way that I laugh when things are horrifying, and that's my displacement behaviour. I did it when my sister got married to a knobhead. But in all seriousness, listen, there's a David Icke video, and he plays the music that they supposedly recorded from Saturn, and we know that everything is energy, everything is vibration, and music is just an expression of that. And when you hear the sounds coming from Saturn, I had to turn it off straight away because it literally chilled me to the bone.
Will you send that to me? Because I would love. We can talk about that, because I wrote down some stuff that we really can't prove. Because I listened to another Jordan Maxwell where he talks about one of his insiders. We can't prove this, but I'm going to bring it up just as speculation. But I want to start from the beginning. So this is what I found. This actually, you know, and this was the first thing, guys, that shook me to my core. But it's been, and I've been in and out of this, looking at the Saturnalian fraternity for a long time, and then I'll walk away and I'll come back. So some things I remember, but some things you kind of forget until you go back and revisit it. But why did Saturn become such a big deal to the ancients? Well, Saturn, this again, guys, we know 7 is a God number, right? Like all the numerologists talk about 7 being this real, we have 777 books of the Bible, real big God number. Well, that's because Saturn is the 7th planet from the sun. Now, back in the ancient times, this was the last planet that they could see. You know, poor Pluto in our time. Pluto's been like broken up with, gotten back together with, broken up with, got back together with. But that was the last planet they could see. So they thought it was the end all be all, that Saturn was like the ultimate judge. And that is part of Saturn's energy. It was Jupiter and Saturn that balanced out the solar system. And they did talk about how Saturn exerts energy fields with sound. Well, all planets exert an energy field, right? That's what we talk about, like in astrology, where a planet is in a particular time of your birth, how it affects you. There is, and I've heard people say, like, all these people who are not spiritualists, who don't believe in spirits, but yet they believe in Wi-Fi. Like, there's energy we can't see, right? That's just there. Saturn is known as the god of war, destruction, karma, father time, and the grim reaper. Now, from a holistic of light perspective, and Catherine, you can give your thoughts on this, like, that's Saturn's place. Saturn is father time. It is the matrix. It is karma. My friend Cindy Ola talks about Saturn a lot. Like, Saturn in its proper placement is kind of sometimes the boring stuff we have to do, like the bills we have to pay, cooking our meals, like the daily chores that we have to do, which would exist regardless of who was in charge of us, right? Like that we would have to harvest the food, like the labor that we do to keep ourselves. That's part of Saturn. Saturn also is responsible for karma, so lessons learned, which is harmless. And it's also, again, it's father time, so it's the grim reaper in that respect, that it's part of the energy that finalizes things. And in its proper placement, that is beautiful. They, of course, have taken it to a whole new level with war, destruction, chaos. Is there anything you want to add to that with your experience with astrology and reading this stuff about Saturn?
I think it made me laugh. The time issue really is something I want to delve deeper into. And I did think perhaps we could get Laura Eisenhower on to talk to us about this as well.
Love that.
Because for me, I mean, it's a standing joke. My friends always say I am not a patient person. And we say in our family, patience is a virtue that I do not possess. And my friends, they always said they'd put on my gravestone, hurry up, because I get very excited by things and I want all the information quickly. And yet on the opposite side of that, I understand that, everything has its season of life, its season of the year, a time to sow, a time to harvest, and that goes through every aspect of our life. So, there's a big difference between understanding things intellectually and how you apply them. And I think that's where some of my research on the Saturn side came in. It's like a lot of it is triggering because people don't necessarily spend the time to really sit and think, like, what are the implications of this? We can jump on one bit of information, like an obvious example is all the symbology that you've got in the pop world associated with Saturn and everything it stands for. But equally, as we said, there were also some things that we need from that energy. So I think it's a really good example when you're looking through this. It's like most of the big subjects that we explore, it's complex and it's dangerous to jump to to quick conclusions.
Yeah, nothing's black and white. It's all nuanced. For example, I didn't even put this in my notes, but I'll go ahead and say it. Like, Saturday is the day of Saturn. Obviously, I'm going to talk about that when we get towards the church. But in the traditional yoga world, we rest on Saturdays because it's the day of Saturn, and because that's where your karma is the most potent. So it's a heavier day. And so we respect that energy and we don't tempt fate, right? We don't push it. We rest that day to reflect on everything we've learned, the seasons of our lives, the evolution of time. Like, that's all the positive side of the Saturnalian, and again, they've pushed it to an extreme. And that's what I think. And I think what's dangerous, we see this a lot in, like, the disclosure world, the truth world, where people want to jump to the extreme of just getting rid of everything. But it's like, but God made Saturn. Like, there's a place for Saturn in a healthy environment. But they have inverted it and taken it too far. And I actually kind of feel sorry for Saturn, because I feel like everything's a sentient being, and it's almost like Saturn has been used and abused by them.
Completely. And
Yeah.
you said something really important there about the sort of Saturday in the yoga world for rest and reset and don't tempt your fate. And my daughter and I were talking about exactly the same thing today with regard to the weather. So it's June here, and it's like a winter's day here. Another subject for why. But what we notice is all the animals don't fight against that. All the cats are sleeping, the dogs don't want to go out on a walk, nature's taken itself away. Probably most of nature's having a natural fast today because they're not going out foraging for their food, because it would do more harm than good for them to do so. And we humans ignore all these cycles, whether it's astrological cycles. Of course, I'm generalizing. A lot of people watching this don't ignore them, but a lot of humanity does ignore the circadian rhythm cycles, nature's cycles, the planetary cycles. And when we ignore them, they have a habit of coming back to bite us in the bum.
Absolutely. Well, that's even in India. Like, we sign contracts that we won't give new postures to students on Tuesday, because Tuesday is the day of Mars, and Mars is the planet of war. And that can be good or bad. It's everything as far as it is neutral. It's us that takes it too far and makes it good or bad. So like in India, my teacher was way more superstitious. Like, they won't even shave on a Tuesday because they don't want to deal with a razor, because the energy is intense for war and destruction. And so we even sign contracts that we won't give postures on Tuesdays, new postures, because of the respect of the planet Mars. And so, in my opinion, sometimes the superstition of India takes it a little too far, but at least they respect it, and at least they understand that, all of us read, I'm sure, my generation, your generation, I'm not sure about, or read Old Man and the Sea. And there's a big theme about man versus nature in that, and that nature will always win. Nature will always win. And so when we can learn to go with the ebb and flow of that nature, the nature within ourselves, the season of our own lives, then there's more. And that's a lot of spiritual practices anyway, learning how to just go with the flow,
Yeah.
or to like release into the flow of life, like the water riding the wave of life. And so, there is a lot we can actually learn if we sit down and look at this, about how to make our lives perhaps a little bit easier. We're not trying to fight against nature, which in itself is black magic, right? The Navajos taught us that white magic, light magic, healing, you work with nature to help somebody move through it. Black magic is working against nature for your own selfish desires. And anytime you do that, there's always a price to pay, because we're an energy exchange consciousness. And so when you're taking, there's always going to be payback at some point. The retribution is great. But with Saturn, what's interesting, it's also called the black sun. Or the black judge, because that Saturn is the judge as well. It's the judge of karma. Black is the color of Saturn worship. I almost said Satan worship, but that's where we get Satan from, is Saturn, right? That's where Satan comes from, is Saturn. Now this is interesting. So we all know the word Sabbath, right? Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Sabbath is the Phoenician word for Saturn, which is why the Sabbath is Saturday.
Right.
In the old Jewish tradition, right? It's still today in Orthodox Judaism, right? They do their services on Saturday. So the Phoenicians were an ancient Semitic civilization, and they also believed that Saturn was the bringer of obstacles too. So resistance brought that, which that's what time does. Yeah, time brings resistance. That's the big Yoga Sutras, like that man suffers because we're trying to hold on to something that's always in an ebb and flow of change, our own mortal lives. That's Saturnalian, that's that father time. And so on the Sabbath, they would do nothing. They would rest in traditional Jewish, and then the Orthodox Jewish religion, they don't even like turn the electricity on, most of my Jewish friends are more modern, so they would watch TV. And that's the same thing with us in yoga. Like, we wouldn't, we would watch TV too and relax, but you're not tempting that, because Saturn is already potent in bringing that resistance. So on the Sabbath or Saturday, you just kind of let it be. You just give in and do nothing to allow the resistance to be there. So Saturn was also known as the god El, as an Elohim, elder, elite. This is all from El, from Saturn. Is there anything else you want to say about that before we get into the hexagram, Catherine?
Well, I just wanted, when you were talking about Saturn and the symbology of what we hold on to, look at one of the main things we see in the, I don't call them the elite or the stars anymore now, call them the parasites, but in terms of they're desperate to hold on to their youth, hence some of the rituals they do to drink certain things, hold on to their youth. You know, you've only got to see supposedly Madonna prancing about on stage older than me now. And I just think this is so important, because when you go through the stages of your life, there's a reason, I believe, why nature makes us less able or wanting to do certain things as we age, for example, because it's moving out of the stage of your body perhaps into the wisdom and the heart stage to share that. And, you know, if you're still off playing football every Saturday at 80 years old, you might not get into that stage. So I think we see this holding on to things so much in a lot of the rituals that we've all been talking about so much.
Interesting that they worship Saturn, but yet they want to fight against
Exactly.
the qualities that Saturn possesses of letting go. And isn't that the big teacher? Every time I think of Madonna, I think about when she was like, this is the great neutralizer. Like Saturn literally is the great neutralizer. It's Death Be Not Proud, one of my favorite poems by John Donne. Death be not proud, though some have called thee, thou art not so. You know, he goes on to talk about how kings and peasants are both, we're all finishing at the same finish line. We're all going into the grave at some point. Like none of us are getting out of this alive. But yet they worship it to the point where it's their satanic rituals now. That's where, again, we get the word satanic from, is from the worship of Saturn. But yet they're fighting against the main quality that Saturn is here to teach us, to surrender to mortality. That's interesting, isn't it? That's
it's
the
very, yeah, it just shows how effed up it all is.
I know.
You know, this, and it also shows how you can literally invert anything, and this is one of the downsides, I think, of the human personality traits, or because what we do is we fight so hard to mold things to our belief systems.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very dangerous trait, unfortunately, that doesn't generally serve any of us.
So those of us who are actually accepting time, and change is hard. Like it is harder getting older.
Yeah.
Like it is. I think all of us struggle with that. I've been like lately getting up, and I have been having a hard time with my feet. Like my feet feel tight when I get up, and I was laughing at my boyfriend. I was like I get up and it takes me a moment to like shake my feet out, like just to go like, get my balance. And my boyfriend goes, I think that's just getting older, because he's 11 years older than me. And he's like, that's just like, oh, that's what they talk about. You know, but isn't that interesting that those of us who can accept the fact that mortality is our fate, and we can appreciate the time we have, we're the ones that are using Saturn in its appropriate place. You know, a lot of like my friend Cindy said, you know, if you want to venerate Saturn and thank Saturn, like a good thing to do would be to go clean up a cemetery. You know, go help or tip a grave worker, like someone that works in death. That's a way to like kind of venerate and say thank you, is to show your appreciation to the seasons of life. So when she works with people, she says, well, go volunteer to help clean up the cemetery and wash the graves, and just show your appreciation to time, because that's what it is, right? When we understand that mortality, we can appreciate the life we're given. And that's another lesson of Saturn. Like Saturn's like, I'm here, I'm Father Time, I'm the Grim Reaper in the black cape coming to get you. So use this time you have in this experience and appreciate the life.
And appreciate what you've got. That's such a good point. And, you know, I'm reading this beautiful book at the moment, and stupidly, I haven't got it here. I can't remember the title. But it's all about the seasons of nature. And if you think there's absolutely nothing, no life form in nature that can survive without death, because it's death that puts all those nutrients back into the soil, back into the atmosphere, and recycles them all back and transmutes them. And I think, yeah, Saturn, for me, it's a bit like most things in life. You know, you appreciate the qualities and respect them, and if you do, you shouldn't have any trouble with it.
Exactly. Well, it's everything. We go through many deaths in a day, right? You know, like I woke up this morning super sore, but I was doing my practice and I was sweating, and I could just feel, you know, those days when you're so sore, and like I could feel like my hips and like my body was just working so hard to do the practice. But then afterwards, that sweet release. So there's as many deaths that we experience throughout the day. That's the Saturnalian ebb and flow too, of the body breaking down to build back up again. And you're right, it's that it can't build back up again unless there's that release of giving into that flame of destruction, which is what Saturn is, because with every destruction there's creation. And that's what makes me so mad, that people think that we're going to walk into the world where this never exists. That's not what this density is about. Like, that's the circle of life. That's the Lion King, right? Like, that opening song in Lion King is a really cool Saturnalian song. Like, this is a circle of life. There's this interesting, did you ever read, Catherine, going up the book Tuck Everlasting?
No.
Yeah, I read it they ended up making a movie. It was one of the most impactful books. It's like a preteen book, but it's actually really heavy. And Tuck Everlasting, again, they have a movie now. It's about this girl, young adolescent girl, goes out in like Victorian times. It's set in America, goes out to the woods and discovers this family living in the woods. And she starts to notice that there's something off. And there's this creek, and they won't let her drink from the creek. It turns out that this family has been around this area since like the early 1800s. And as they were pioneering, they drank from this creek, not knowing that that water was everlasting life. So they've never died. And it goes into their story about how they didn't even realize it until the animals are the people in their life who hadn't started aging, and they never aged. Then they figured out it was the water. And the little girl kind of has a crush on the boy that's around her age, although he's literally like 100 years older than her, but stuck in this body. And she contemplates drinking from the spring. And the father takes her out, and they're sitting on a canoe in the lake, and he explains to her about the circle of life and how death is necessary. And that drinking from this fountain is one of the worst mistakes she could ever make. And he wishes that he could take it back, but they didn't know. And that death is necessary. It's part of life. And she ends up not drinking. And at the end of the book, it's modern times, and the boy drives up on a motorcycle to visit her grave, that she allowed herself to live life. And that's, I remember as a kid, like, that's a very impactful, like, this is something that's if we all just had everlasting life. It's like the Emerald Tablets. Like one of the most profound things on the Emerald Tablets is when Thoth said, when you're only in spirit form, you don't know death. So if you don't know death, you don't know life. You come into physicality so that you can know death, and therefore can be a creator and create life. So like that second chakra, like our lower three chakras, is our humanity. And the second chakra is one of creation. That's in our humanity, not in our spiritual chakras. That's down in our humanity, because that's where that exists. And that is what Saturn is here to teach us in the positive template, as it was intended, is that for every right there is a wrong, for every up there is a down, for every left there is a right, for every life there is a death. And that circle of life continues. But it's just so fascinating, Catherine, that the people who actually worship Saturn, because we don't worship Saturn.
No, exactly.
We might venerate it on Saturday or acknowledge it, but we're not worshiping it. They're literally worshiping it, and yet they're fighting the main lesson that Saturn is there to teach them. They're fighting the main lesson.
Yeah, so from your research, why do they worship Saturn, and what advantage do they think it brings them?
I don't know, because I've never worshipped Saturn, and then this is just my own philosophical theories. If we look at black magic is going against nature for your own selfish reasons. I think in their mind that if they can worship Saturn, if they can do sacrifices in Saturn's name, which Saturn never asked us to do that, which we're going to get kind of in the Saturnalian festivals, with which they would do that. I think they think that they can beat it. They can bring it's almost like the fawn response, like in trauma. Like if you can fawn somebody, they won't abuse you.
Yeah.
Sense, even though Saturn is not.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what they're trying to like outplay Saturn, in my opinion, by maybe worshiping it. Which we're going to get a little bit into something that Jordan Maxwell was saying in a minute with some of his insiders, which might give it even more complexity to that. I mean, if we have a whistleblower that wants to tell us why they pick Saturn to worship and why they literally go against the main teaching of Saturn, then please email us and let us know, because I don't know.
Come on and explain it with us. We want to know. We want to have the discussion around it, because there's again, when you study these things, and it's like, know your opposition, know your enemy. It's so important, because you need to understand what their tactics are and why, so that you can arm yourself against them. And how long this has been going on, and how it's infused through literally every area of society, from the justice system to the banking system to religion to education. Literally, I couldn't really find any area of society where this hadn't infiltrated into.
Even like calendar. So we're going to get into the
Yeah.
word calendar in a minute. Um, I want to talk a little bit about Saturn's hexagram, because I found this to be totally fascinating. So the star of Saturn is a six-pointed star. Now the priest of Saturn would draw, which were Jewish priests, rabbis, would draw this six-pointed star, a hexagram, and they would stand in the middle of the star and hex people through the power of Saturn. That's where we get the word hex from, hexagram. That, for educational and entertainment purposes only, allegedly, wink, wink, turned into the Star of David.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in modern times, what's fascinating, you guys, in modern times, they were able to send, we can question this if we want. I find this fascinating, though. I actually believe this, because why else would our ancients do this with a hexagram? They were able to send equipment out and take pictures up close of Saturn. The North Pole of Saturn has a hexagram on it. How did the ancients know that? I mean, there's a lot of questions I have about ancient history, especially since what we've been taught isn't necessarily the truth. I actually, in my personal opinion, think we're living in the dark ages. I think our ancestors
Yes.
were way more advanced than we are. Now, the star, in that hexagram, there's like this void, like this, you can tell, almost like, those toys you have as a kid where you put blocks in. That's what it kind of looks like. And I'm going to put the pictures up in the editing process. Now, this becomes the square, the black square, which is Mecca in Saudi Arabia.
Mm.
There's black squares of Saturn all over the world, though.
Yeah.
Many examples of black square, a town square, red square. Now, the Masons have used this as well to do the Masonic square. And if you look at the Masonic square and look at the placement of a lot of town squares, they're in that Masonic six-pointed square that they've created, which is Saturnalian worship or Satan worship. How many people do you think know that Satan comes from Saturn, Catherine?
Well, I think probably quite a lot of your audience will, but I think in terms of general public, I think hardly anyone would even think about it at all.
Yeah, and they've only made it dark and satanic by their inversions of it. It was never supposed to be that way. Now, what's interesting too, making sure I'm not missing anything here. Oh, I did miss something. What do we wear on our heads when we graduate?
A mortarboard.
Which is a
square.
That's Saturnalian. Why are the graduation gowns all over the world, mind you? This is not cultural. It's not like England came up with black gowns, or France, or this is all what they wear black gowns. We wear black gowns when we graduate, don't we?
I want to look into that, because I think, and I'm going to look into it whilst you're talking through the next bit and come back to it, because I'm pretty sure that masters gowns and I can't do it on there, I'll do it on my phone. That masters gowns and PhD gowns, I'm not sure that they're black. I will ask away whilst you're looking
I'm laughing. Neither my sister nor I walked. Do you guys have that option, Catherine, in England, to walk or not? We don't have to walk if we don't want to. So like when we finish school and we can petition to graduate, we can just request to get our papers and not actually walk across the stage and get.
Right.
Neither my sister nor I walked. We both. I'm not doing the pomp and circumstances. I don't need to sit in a hot polyester gown in the middle of summer and walk across the stage and wait for 100 people before me to walk. And so none of my friends, a lot of people don't really walk, but some people do. Well, to high school, they kind of force you to here in America, and in
we don't do high school. Well, we didn't in our town. Now they've gone to high school sort of proms and things, but we never used to do anything for high school at all.
Well, we didn't. My school was private. We didn't wear a gown and a cap. We wore the girls had to wear white dresses and the boys wore suit and tie to get their high school diploma. But that's a private school, so that's a little different. But we also have priests. We're black.
Well, no,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry. I just think this is fascinating. Sorry, just going back so we can finish this one off. MSc gowns, so Master of Science gowns, are usually black, but the hood and trimmings often reflect the university's colours or the faculty or the discipline. But PhD, so doctorate gowns, more elaborate, many are not black but are scarlet or bright red.
Which is another color.
Oxford, for example, is a bright red gown with black facings. Cambridge is scarlet, so blah, blah, blah. But some universities may use black doctoral gowns with velvet panels and coloured trims. And also look at the hood of the gowns as well. I mean, how scary are they? Yeah, they're like
the cloak. It's the cloak they use. It's
in what we did, traitors.
A traitor's cloak. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like they're wearing pastel pink.
Yeah.
Like or blue. You know, why black and red?
Exactly.
Like the higher you go, the scarlety red. That's interesting, isn't it?
Very interesting.
And nobody thinks to question that, do they?
Yeah.
Nobody thinks to question why that is. It's just how it is.
Yeah.
And of course, our sponsor today is the Esoteric Academy. The Esoteric Academy is a virtual online mystery school, or shala, where my friend Paula and I have opened this particular virtual shala in order to help as many people as we can. As many of you guys know, I spent a good portion of my 30s in India studying traditional yoga with one of the foremost Param gurus in the traditional yoga system of India. I am the only female who's authorized to teach this particular form of yoga in the state of Georgia. Now, with that being said, what I've done is I've taken all of the things that I have learned about the energetic body, the chakra system, the bandhas, the meridians, somatic healing, the axis point, all of these things we talk about in this Great Awakening that have to do with the body, that are energetic but manifest in the physical. I've taken all of these lessons from traditional yoga and I have incorporated them into modern day exercise classes that are more feasible for people who want to do this in the comfort of their own home. Traditional yoga can be very complicated and needs a one-on-one teacher, but with this virtual Esoteric Academy, you're able to learn all of these lessons again in the comfort of your own home, and you get me as a teacher. You get access to me to help you help yourself. Within the Esoteric Exercise playlist, we have so many different types of exercise, from walking videos to intense cardio to traditional yoga to bar fusion classes to strength training to even classes like the one here where we use a chair. Every single level from beginner to advanced is met on this academy. And again, once a month, you get a live class with me where I can workshop with you to help you with your own body's alignment. On top of that, you get monthly phone calls with Paula and me where we discuss things like the doshas, quantum healing, again, somatic healing. And on top of that, we have the privilege of having other master teachers join us on this platform, including my friend Cindy Ola and Todd Roderick, who is the senior most teacher in the southeast of the United States. At the Esoteric Academy, we also have a playlist full of courses, including the Alchemy of Movement, courses on the Bhagavad Gita, courses on health, healing, and beyond, a look at Ayurvedic, homeopathic healing, as well as different quantum healing practices provided by Paula and meditations. We are also developing a Vedic chanting course with Todd Roderick, who is also been granted permission to teach a very, very traditional form of Vedic chanting. And we have a new course where we are combining the teachings of the Cassiopeans with the Yoga Sutras. Now, right now, we are running a special. We try to keep our prices super low for many, many reasons. We want to be able to help as many people as possible, and we can do that on a virtual platform where we can keep the prices low so that we're able to maintain the business while helping as many people as we can. But right now, we are offering specific deals with a bunch of different content creators. So right for today, for this video, I'm going to be using Catherine Edwards' code. So if you want to check out the Esoteric Academy for either the $25 a month tier, which is just the exercise classes, or the $40 a month tier, which includes all of the exercise classes as well as the courses, you can get 20% off the first 6 months of your tuition at the Esoteric Academy by using the discount code Catherine5. Catherine with the C, that will be on the screen in front of you as well as down in the description box below. On top of that, you also get 7 days of a free trial. Now, please make sure that when you use this discount code that you put all the letters in capital in the discount code area when you go to check out. Again, that's Catherine5 with the C, all capitalized letters that will be down in the description box below. And we look forward to seeing you over on the Esoteric Academy. Now back to the show.
Yeah.
Priests wear black robes. Rabbis wear black. A lot of religious, now the Hinduism, they wear white. The Brahmins wear white, like lungis. And even with like Islam, now Islam is predominantly a Venus worshipping religion, but they still have mixed in with Saturnalian stuff, like the black cube that they circle around. Let's see, we have judges wear black robes. Now, do attorneys, now, because, you know, we always get cracked up about the court system in England because everyone puts a costume on. The wigs. Now, do the attorneys wear wigs as well, or just the judge?
Okay. I think it really depends. I'd need to look it up. I think it really depends whether you're in a crown court or a magistrate's court and all the rituals get associated with that. So I'd really need to look it up about who has to wear the wigs, who has to wear the gowns, etc. So I'm sure people will correct us in the comments, but yeah, I know there's different systems. I've been in both types of court systems, not personally on the stand yet, but they vary a lot, and I haven't really, I can't remember the intricacies of which is which.
Because in America, the judge will wear a black robe, but the attorneys, both the attorneys, the DA, prosecutor, and defense will wear just a suit and tie or no pomp and circumstances, just court attire. And that gets into, like, obviously the banking system, which is a whole other topic, which is connected to the Saturnalian. That's a different topic with the judge. Everything is playing for the bank. That's why you go to court. It's a racket. It's a game for the bank. The bank is then owned by the Saturnalian Fraternity. The Saturnalian Fraternity, interesting enough, Catherine, from what modern researchers have claimed, started in Germany, which we know the R family. I thought that was fascinating. That their headquarters are kind of, you know, that's kind of their claim. Not all, I have a lot of German ancestry, not all Germans, guys. It's just kind of interesting that, and that's a very deep conversation. The whole banking system with the Saturnalian, the bar, you know, being born dead on arrival, with the docking the maritime law versus land law. Again, there's so many different channels that go deep into that. I want to focus mainly on the main things about Saturnalian that affect us. Now, this is interesting. Do you know what's on the south pole of the planet Saturn?
No.
The eye.
Oh, wow.
The eye. The way it looks. So again, riddle me that, Batman. Like, how did the ancestors know this? Because they were doing the all-seeing eye in reference to Saturn, which again makes sense for, like, Father Time, and that Father Time is always watching. The Grim Reaper comes from us for us all. I think I'd have to double check, but there's a story I was told once, and I can't remember if it was my boyfriend who saw this or his mother, but it was right before his grandmother passed, as many years ago, passed away. She was very old, very sick, and whichever the one that saw it was laying on the sofa sleeping, because all the bedrooms were full of family. There's a window same house we go to. It might have been his mom actually woke up and saw the Grim Reaper like walk by the window. I'll have to double check. It was either him or his mom. He told me the story. I know he told me. I don't know if he said it was him. And then his grandmother passed away. So Saturnalian energy obviously comes for us in God's perfect design. I mean, this is all God's design. So the all-seeing eye makes sense because that's the judge, right, of karma.
Yeah.
And so and again, I'm going to put all the pictures up in the editing process, guys, so you guys can see this for yourself. Is there anything you want to add to that, or?
Well, I agree. I think when you look at any of the sort of ancient studies, the hidden laws of the universe, whatever system you want to be following, I certainly, it's pretty obvious that most of the abilities that we're meant to have, we're not using or aware of at the moment. So there's a huge resurgence in understanding telepathy, time travel, out-of-body experiences, projecting yourself to remote viewing. We know all these abilities exist. But most of us aren't using them, and that's deliberate. So I do agree with you in terms of we're much more in the dark ages, because we think we're so clever because we invent these, but they could do everything that these do without any device. You don't need them. So again, it's all inversion, isn't it? We think that we're so progressive because of the technologies that we've got now, but the whole point is we don't need those technologies. Canadian geese don't need a sat nav.
No.
Migrate.
I always think about it this way. Like when we talk about moving, and if we moved in Atlanta, we would probably have to move, even though I like Midtown, pretty far away from where we live now, because Robbie would always come back. He thinks this is his home. And that would be hard because animals they know, like if Robbie got lost, he would know where his home is. He would know how to get back. He pulls us when we're out on WALKs. Sorry, guys, he's into the room. He might not, but that's a big trigger word. When he's ready to go home, he starts to pull us towards the house. Like, he wants to go. So they don't need the GPS like we do. We've been so disconnected. And I think a lot of it does come back to the fact that the people, our establishment, have totally taken the balance away from these astrological influences. Like they put more emphasis on one than the other. So it's created an imbalance within our own lives. I also want to talk about like the calendar. This comes from Saturn's rings. So rings or corona or crown. This is also where we get calendar from, the rings of Saturn. So where we get our wedding bands from. The rings of Saturn, when we get married in traditional, either whether with a justice of the peace or in a church, the guy is Saturnalian, right? He's wearing a black robe when he marries us. That's a very Saturnalian. Now, when I say that, I mean the business of marriage, not being monogamous with a partner, because I feel like my boyfriend and I are pretty much married, even though we don't have the paperwork. But to go through the ritual is Saturnalian. Now, I don't actually have a problem with that. I think I don't have a problem with wedding. And I know some people freak out about that, but I think you're committing yourself to someone. And if it's a Saturnalian for the time of this life that you're married, because what's the vows? Till death do us part, even though we don't take that seriously anymore. That's Saturnalian till death do us part. That is you only part when one person passes away. What do you think about that, Catherine? Since you're married, what do you think about that?
I think virtually everything, it's really interesting. I think when you go on the research journey, most people dive really deep. And then when you dive really deep, you can take everything really literally. And I think a lot of this stuff is symbolic, so you can take the good bits from it, or you can choose to take the bad bits from it. So personally, I think, a lot of animals mate for life, and they don't go into church and
put a ring on
things. But I think humans, because we do so much of our communication, unlike animals, through the verbal word, through talking, I think that we express things very differently to the rest of nature. So I think a lot of the ceremonies that we do are very unique to us because of the fact that our dominant way of communicating is through words.
Yeah, and that's something that, from what I understand from the Cassiopeians, is very much our planet. That a lot of other third density planets they have telepathy. That we've created sound basically, and that ritual, like we need that ritual, and that and I don't have a problem with the ritual. I just have a problem with the government being involved. Like that's my thing, is like when the government gets involved with that piece of paper here in America, they start auditing couple, and but the ritual of it all, I mean, if that's what you want to do to profess your love to someone, I think that's a beautiful thing. And it
But
is
also, why do we have to do it? And I think, half the reason why we have to do it is because humans are inherently a lot less trustworthy than most animals are. When you look at the animals that pair for life in nature, I'm not aware of any of examples of them having affairs.
right.
Going off and, running off with another partner or something. So I think inherently it says a lot about human nature and how we don't take a lot of these things very seriously, a bit like we don't take nature seriously, and it always comes back to bite us. So I think all of these are such deep topics in themselves. And I think, when you look at the whole thing of marriage, no one should need a bit of paper to tell someone that you're making a commitment. But I think to some people, it's really important to have that public display of commitment. But as you say, most people don't take those vows seriously anymore. I mean, I've just been to someone's third wedding, and I'm sitting there, listening to them talk about their vows, and I'm just like, what are you doing?
Your toast is like, hopefully this
how many times you were saying these vows, and they obviously mean nothing to you because you haven't stood by any of them. So I find it all quite amusing, really.
I had that problem before once on David Zublick's channel, where I was called a heathen because I lived with my boyfriend without being married. And I thought, actually, I think my boyfriend and I have a healthier marriage than most people who are married do, because we're each other's best friends. We're always together. We're always doing things together. I mean, we are committed to each other. We've been together for so long. It's so funny. Even our court system here in Atlanta, this is just the state of Georgia, guys. I was listening to this podcast from this attorney in family court. And I don't know how it is in your state, because every state's different. But in the state of Georgia, do you know, Catherine, that attorneys here, if my boyfriend and I were to separate because of how long we've been together, divorce court, family court, would take our case more seriously than someone who had been married for less than 5 years. Because that's how people are just getting so many divorces, that they take long-term committed common law relationships more serious than people getting divorced in less than 5 years, because people have like a starter marriage now. They have their starter marriage,
Yeah.
And you're right. I never thought about that. It's like we have to make this pomp and circumstances in order to like commit. Whereas penguins mate for life, right? Like, don't male penguins bring a female penguin a rock too?
Exactly.
Lobsters mate for life.
Yeah.
There was a dog that used to live next door named Ruby, and she was a little butterball, tubby little thing. And that was Robbie's girlfriend. They just loved each other. And then Ruby moved away, and Robbie's never shown interest since then. I'm like, that was his mate. But yeah, that's
I know. But I think, a lot of these things, I think that's why looking into some of these things can make you really look deeper into some of the ways we behave. But I'm still very intrigued and would love to know more about why this was adopted in the first place. And what
the crowns that people wear are the kings and queens. That's the Saturnalian. Yeah. Well, an informant of Maxwell claimed that the rings, speaking of rings, so I saved this part, and the sound coming off of them. This informant told Maxwell, guys, I don't know who this guy was, keep this with a grain of salt, that the rings were created by extraterrestrial beings that lived on Saturn, and they used those rings to communicate with us. So it's interesting that the kings and queens, who consider themselves to be elite, wear crowns. Is that part of the communication devices of the ancient for them to communicate with the beings of Saturn? I don't know. I just thought that was fascinating. And it's interesting because it's funny. I texted to you yesterday, Catherine, because Jordan Maxwell's an American. David Icke is an English guy. And Maxwell was a lot older than Icke. But during a time where there was no internet, both these men were doing extensive research.
Yeah.
And both kind of found the same thing. And then in later life, when they developed platforms, they both would kind of credit each other. And it was kind of cool. Like Jordan Maxwell talks about David Icke a lot. And I thought that was really respectful that these guys kind of found, it makes it more credible when these two complete strangers in different countries, different generations, found the same information. Saturnalian was a celebration in Rome 13 days before the 25th, so the 12 days of Christmas, which was complete chaos. that would ensue in Rome during this time. And this brings us to the last point I wanted to make, and if you have anything you want to add, was church, where church comes from. And this gets into, again, to Saturnalian worship. It comes from the English word church comes from the Scottish word kirk, which comes from the Greek goddess Circe. Now, you guys have heard me mention this from time to time. Circe was the goddess of magic in Greek mythology. Now, get this. She was the daughter of the sun god Christos Helios. That is where we get the term Christian from. The worshiping of Christos Helios. Now remember, I said in the beginning that the ancients believed that Saturn and Jupiter balance the solar system, solar sun. So solar sun, Saturn, Christos Helios, Saturn, Satan, Christian Satan, balance of good and evil. But with church, Circe, so church, the goddess, had the power to hypnotize humans and turn them into animals through the sun, right? To then feed off. So the sun pulls the life in, church transforms the life to feed back to Satan. And that's why Saturday and Sunday are right next to each other in the weekend.
Coco's listening and she's like, what the hell?
I'm so mad. I'm like, but once you see it, you can't unsee it.
And I've just realised I match Coco. Look, I've got a white patch as well. So
Coco's like, duh, you humans didn't know this?
yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to need to think about that. I'm going to need to re-listen to that and really think about that, because that's interesting. That's correct me if I'm wrong. What I've just taken from that is like the sun is transmuting things into something that can be given back to evil, and yet I always think of the sun as transmuting things for good.
I think the sun is supposed to be for good. I think they've inverted it.
Yeah.
They've capitalized. So Helios, Christo, the sun, the Helios, the sun, we bring the daughter church or Circe in. So the sun brings people out to play, right? The sun brings people out. And then that pulls, it's like they're using the sun, the Christos Helios. So they're using the sun to lure people into the church. So walking into the building to hypnotize. What do the priests wear? Black robes, Saturnalian robes. So I agree with you. I think the sun is amazing. I think we need the sun. I am a sun bather. I love the sun. But we're working with the sun in its right template.
Yeah, exactly. And no wonder that they're now publicly coming out with what they've been doing for years about saying how they're going to be blocking off the sun and how it's awful. And again, this is also inverted with when you look at the trying to reduce carbon levels, trying to reduce the power from the sun. It's always carbon and the sun are the whole life force of this planet. Yeah. So yeah, very, very fascinating. But I think it's worth everyone really sort of doing some explorations on this, and at the very least go and look at the Jordan Maxwell video and just sort of sit there and think, because a lot of the time when you're on this awakening journey and you're looking into how inverted it is and how the parasites are trying to control us and use certain rituals and why so much symbology and so many dates are so important, it can all seem a little bit ridiculous. But when you start seeing how long ago this all started and how ingrained in certain parts of the population these rituals and I don't know what else to call it, then it all starts making more sense.
Yeah, I mean, the sun worship Sunday is the day of the sun. That's the sun worship. And then they bring in their witchcraft through church, through hypnotism, in order to pull back into Saturn. And so that's what Christianity is. It's a sun worshiping cult that got transformed and transmuted. The Sabbath used to be the day of the Jewish faith, which we say Judeo-Christian. It affects our whole lives. We graduate through the Saturnalian system. And again, I just want to reiterate to our people listening, I think our viewers are pretty cool with this. It's not about getting rid of Saturn. It's not about it's about restoring balance, and knowledge is power, knowledge protects. So if you know that Saturn is Father Time, well, that's not something that's in the Bible. That's in multiple, that we have the time, that bird song, to everything, turn. There's a season that comes from the Bible. That is legitimate. Like, there are seasons. We have seasons of our lives. We have seasons. That's the beauty of Saturn. But when we have this elite group wearing their crowns, trying to have information that we don't have, and they use this, they invert this for black magic and control, that's when it becomes a problem. And it's not Saturn's fault that this is happening. It's not Saturn's fault. It's our fault.
No, not at all.
Dumbed down enough to do it.
It also really makes me think, what are they, my mind immediately goes to Neuralink and all the satellites that are being put up in a thing that we sort of think they're to transmute messages into us, which I think they are, but they're also quite possibly, they could be a conduit.
From the Lizzies that are you.
And I tell you what, when you listen to that music from Saturn, you do not want that pumped into you.
I would love to hear that, because that.
Yeah, well, don't listen to it for long though, or get your sage out when you're listening to it.
Yeah, you guys, I can't wait to hear what our God, I have even more notes that I just didn't add in, like the whole Yahweh.
I've got so many notes on it. I've got like pages and pages. But again, for me,
we want to do a part 2, Catherine.
Let's see what questions come up, shall we? Let's see what questions we've got. Let's see who in the audience knows more information that we can dive deep into. Certainly, you've been diving deep into this for a lot longer than I have, and I just find it absolutely fascinating. I'm going click, 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 click. But equally, I've got a lot of questions still.
I didn't even get into the American money. I mean, Jordan Maxwell focused on the American dollar, obviously, because he's American. I'm sure it's also on the British pound and the euro, all the Saturnalian references that are on our money, and so we can continue this. This is such a vast subject, and no matter how much we research, I'm sure there's still stuff we're not going to know. So let us know, you guys. For those who are new, Catherine and I go alternate every week back and forth. Catherine's got it. I don't even think I have any cash on me.
Oh my God, yes. Look at the 2 pillars up here and the dome, and
we didn't even get to the pillars, did we?
Oh, there's loads on here and I've only just started looking.
Do you have Charles on the money yet, or is it still Elizabeth?
We've got, my ones, I've still got Elizabeth. I haven't seen any with Charles yet. But if anyone wants to send me lots of money with Charles on,
I'll take it. I'll accept it.
I'll gratefully accept it. But oh my goodness, yes. There's lots, and I can look into this.
I mean, guys, we just skimmed the surface of this. There's just so many different things to go into. Let us know in the comment section below if you want us to do a part 2. We're going to be over on Catherine's channel next week. Maybe we can call Charles. Do you think King Charles would come on our show and just spill the dirt for us?
I think I've got enough sage for that, Bryce.
Meghan Markle is kicking up a storm over here.
Although, actually, that is allowed, because if anyone comes into my garden, thank goodness the sage has taken over. So I've got so much sage growing around my garden. I feel quite well protected.
So if anybody sees Charles trying to get into Catherine's house but can't, that's why. Meghan Markle's over here in America, her and Harry. It's kind of a running joke that she's begging for attention. She just wants attention. Maybe I could just reach out to her and be like,
go on, reach out to her and just see what she knows about it.
Megs, come on,
macho. I really want to see questions that people have got below. Please let us know other good resources that you've come across, and if you've got other areas that we should be discussing that are really significant to what we're going through today. I would love it.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you so much, everybody. Please be kind in the comment section. I know this is a triggering topic, but remember Aristotle's quote, it's a sign of an intelligent mind when you can entertain an idea without accepting it. And we'll see you guys next week over on Catherine's channel for our coffee chat over there. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye. Let me show